The impact.
Living in a memory.
Now, there was a book that was put out a few months ago called The Great Taking. And in that, it's described how, for instance, stocks, we might go out and say, well, I want to buy a share of Coca-Cola stock, right?
Right.
So let's say it's $50. I open up a brokerage account, I put $50 in it, and I buy a share of Coke. I own a share of Coke, right? Well, not anymore. That's how it used to be. Now you own a security entitlement.
Mm.
And they can take that share of Coke at the brokerage and say somebody wants to short that because they think Coke is going down. That means they sell it. They sell your share, even without your knowledge, to somebody else with the promise that they'll buy it back again later. And their hope is that it'll go down in price. They'll sell it for 50, buy it back for 40, and pocket the $10. But in the meantime, you think you own a share of Coke, and the person they sold your share to thinks they own the share of Coke. Well, you can't both own the share of Coke.
Yeah.
There's only one share. There's not two. So if the broker, if the system, the whole system goes belly up, who owns the share, right? This is a shell game. It's a game of musical chairs that works as long as the music is playing. But when the music stops, there's not enough chairs for the people that think they have a chair. So then you have, we can get into all the minutia of who would own it, but you would not legally own it at that point. So then this is not going to sit well with most people, right? So people are going to be carrying the torches and the pitchforks to Washington, D.C. and all the other world capitals and saying, no, I want my assets back. Well, we can't do that, but what we can do is, we can make you whole with central bank digital currency.
Yeah.
Right? So as we talked about before with that incentive, hey, go sign up for your account. There's $10,000 waiting for you. Well, if you're willing to take the central bank digital currency, you can have your 401k back.
Yeah.
You can have cash in the bank back. You can have all of these things because that's the only way we can do it. And on top of that, when you do that, it's going to make it better because we'll be able to avoid anything like this happening in the future. So, for instance, we think of the great financial crisis. There was Bernie Madoff. He was running this Ponzi scheme and built people out of billions of dollars. Some people lost everything. They were in their 80s and 90s and they had to go back to work. It was awful.
Wow.
But what they'll do is they'll say there's going to be somebody like that again in this next crisis, probably multiple somebodies. And they'll say, if only we had insight into their financials, we would have known that this was a scam. And central bank digital currency will give us that insight. And they've actually brought this up in an FDIC meeting a little over a year ago where they were having a sort of a crisis resolution meeting with the FDIC and other agencies. How do we what happens if we had these bank failures on a massive scale? And one of the participants said, well, what about non-financial, systemically important entities? So like, let's say you're not a big bank like JP Morgan, but you're, say, a hedge fund. And if you collapse, well, the whole global financial system collapses, right? How do we gain insight into that? And they said, well, you can't. We don't legally have any insight into that. So what they're going to be pushing for, and we saw some indications of this in the media when we had the bank problems in March, was they talked about runs on the banking system. And well, it's not like it was in the 1930s where you had this line outside the bank. Now people can get on their phone and instantly transfer everything. So it's a 21st century bank run. So they're going to be saying, well, we can't have 21st century banking and 20th century regulation. We need 21st century regulation, and CBDCs give us that real-time, accurate information that we need to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. And if you have a large percentage of the public that's lost their jobs, lost their 401k, is facing financial ruin, that's going to sound really good, especially when all the media talks about the culprit was this person running a Ponzi scheme or this hedge fund or this bank, and they were doing nefarious things. And if only the government had known about it, they would have been able to stop it. Well, the
So it's
government
more
knows
control.
about it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all about control.
It's all about control. Yeah.
So it'll be pushing people toward that.
Yeah. Do you have any sense of, and maybe this is just me speculating, but do you have any sense of what's going on this year with, it just seems like, dude, midnight, January 1st, the first minute, I look at my phone and I got all these things on, there's earthquakes everywhere, right? We were greeted to earthquakes and tsunamis. And 2024, man, is shaping up already. Israel's at war. Now they're trying to pull people away from, Canada. Other countries are saying, get out of Lebanon. This thing, you were talking about right now, it seems to be a financial war. How close are we to this thing just going completely rogue? And we've got Yemen, I believe it is, shooting ships in. Where do you kind of see? I'm not asking you to be a prophet, but dude, there's a lot of signs. There's a lot of things. Where are we, man?
Well, in regard to what happens next, that's just guesses on my part based on observations. But you mentioned earlier seeing some things in the financial system. So back in October and November, we saw several news stories come out. One about banks in Japan that were unable to make deposits and withdrawals or even clear people making deposits for several days, and it was called a glitch. Then a few weeks later, we had the same thing happen to the major banks in the United States here. Then we had a glitch with a treasury auction. Then we had a ransomware attack with one, right? So you're seeing this pattern. And all along the way, we talked about that bank term funding program where $100 billion had been borrowed by the U.S. banks back in March. That stayed pretty steady from May to October. And then it started inching up. And we've seen it really, I think it's the last I saw, maybe it was 123 billion, up from 103 billion just a couple of months ago. So we're seeing that used more and more by banks. At the same time, back in mid-December, we saw the chairman of the Federal Reserve come out, and he had previously said just a few days earlier, no, we're keeping interest rates where they are. We have no intent, right? We have no intent to lower rates. And then all of a sudden, well, now we foresee 3 rate cuts in the year ahead. Just like that in a matter of days.
Yeah.
You think, why? What does he know that we don't? Because I can assure you, he knows a lot of things that we don't, and they're keeping it secret. And we know that for sure because that FDIC meeting I mentioned earlier, a little over a year ago, they actually said that. They had this one woman that said, well, we have our communication to DC politicians, and we have the message we want to communicate to Wall Street, and we have our message we want to communicate to the public. And they're all different. And one of the guys up there said, well, you and I, we don't have faith in the banking system, but we got to make sure that everybody else does. And they were all like, ha, 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 right? So no, we're going to be the last people to find out that something has gone wrong. But these are indicators to me that something has gone wrong in the system. So as we move through the first 3 months of this year, and we get closer to that bank term funding program coming to an end, we're seeing the banks pulling off of this fund. I'm thinking something is broken somewhere, and that may break out into public knowledge through a declining stock market, a stock market crash, or a bank holiday, which is just one day you wake up and the banks are all closed. and you can't make any transactions for a couple of weeks while they sort out things and move to the next system. I think this could also be forced by some sort of external event, because you mentioned the Houthis in Yemen. So if you look at what's going on now, almost all of the shipping that was going through the Red Sea, which again is, depending on who you consult, 1/6 to 1/8 of global trade is going through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. Almost all of that has been rerouted around Africa at great expense. I mean, that causes delays. It causes logistics problems, because now, well, do you have enough ships? Because it's not like there's all these extra ships sitting around. And if it takes an extra 10 to 14 days to ship things, well, those ships that were previously able to be filled are now still en route to their last destination. And then they use up, I think it's 500,000 barrels of oil per day more to go that route.
Wow.
So that impacts our gasoline prices. It has major implications, but the biggest implication I see, we do not see this cleared up in the very near future, is it is the United States and its standing. Because we talked before about the United States and its ability to project power globally, particularly with the US Navy and keeping shipping lanes open. That's one of the things that's made the world have this US dollar reserve currency standard, and people participate in the US global financial system. Is, well, the US will make sure that there's this free flow of trade. If some rebels in Yemen can stand down the US Navy, then that's blood in the water for the sharks. And so Iran is ultimately behind what's going on with these Houthi rebels. Iran could shut down an even more important area, which is the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
And if they did that, we would see complete global catastrophe, meaning we would see probably $500 a barrel oil, gasoline prices would skyrocket, we'd see financial markets crash. And, we talked about before this game of musical chairs. A lot of people don't realize, we look at the stock market. The stock market makes all the headlines, but the largest market in the world is the derivatives market. It's estimated at $2 to $4 quadrillion, but nobody really even knows what the real number is. And that's all of these, basically they're bets that banks have placed on, well, will interest rates go down or up, for instance? And one bank will bet on this, and then the other one will bet on that. And you buy these to supposedly hedge your risk, so that if you place a bet down that event A will happen, but then event B happens, well, no problem. I don't lose everything because I've bought some insurance over here.
Right.
From these guys. And again, that's fine as long as the music's playing. But when the music stops, when the person that's supposed to pay you for that loss you just took is bankrupt and unable to pay you, now you've become bankrupt. And as a financial institution, you're probably somebody else's insurance that they're counting. And so
domino effect.
So the dominoes start falling. Yeah, I was going to say,
if we had an event in the Middle East like that, where we had the Strait of Hormuz shut down, the derivatives market would blow sky high, and we would see a crash like worse than the Great Depression and the 1929 crash.
Yeah, the picture I got in my mind when you're talking about this, the old carnival you used to go to, where you see the guy over there doing plates, and somebody just happens to walk into him and. That's literally the mental picture I got while you were talking. I was like, that is literally what the entire world economy is based on. It's about keeping those fragile plates in the air as long as they possibly can, while all the time they're hoping they can slip in their partner over here to keep the plates in the air. while this guy gets tired. That's literally what's happening. So, Britt, I've heard you talk about, you know, you believe there is a depression coming, and we, you know, and it's not going to be like the one back in the 20s and 30s, or at least last as long. And what it's going to look like, and what should we do and prepare. So I want to boil all of this down in 2 minutes. You know, there again, the impossible. But how do we boil this down to make it practical for the guy that's watching this, who's married, got 3 kids, he makes $60,000 a year, his wife works in a restaurant, you know, as a hostess, you know, they don't have a lot of money. They're living paycheck to paycheck. What do we do? What do they do? How do we make it practical for people? I mean, this is great information. How do we make it practical?
Yeah, there's a lot you can do to prepare, even if you don't have a lot of resources. So first and foremost, most important, if you don't know Jesus Christ, that's the most important thing you can do to prepare. You have to come to know him, because Jesus will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. And history tells us that when you have a crisis, the people that survive are the people that have a purpose. They have a reason within themselves rather than something externally. So Jesus will help see you through that. Jesus said, those who build their lives on him are like someone who builds a house on a rock versus shifting sand. And when the storm comes, the house on shifting sand is going to be blown away. The one on the rock will still be standing. So the most important thing you can do is to know Jesus and to be focused on him, and then you can withstand anything this world throws at you. Now, for those who, once you've done that, if you're trying to prepare for things like, you know, just think of what are the worst things that could happen? What are my vulnerabilities? How do I prepare? So one of the things that I think is very likely to happen is a bank holiday similar to what we saw during the Great Depression, where the banks are shut down, where we see the global credit markets freeze. Now, everything runs on credit. So, you know, from the milk coming from the cow at the farm to the shelf in the grocery store, there's a bunch of intermediaries there, and they all depend on credit in order to make that system flow efficiently. So if the credit disappears, the milk on the shelf disappears. Now, that won't be permanently, right? So you don't need to go out and buy a cow, right?
I was just about to go out and do that.
I'm never going to be able to get
Kevin and I were going to go buy us a cow.
But if you remember,
so we don't have to go buy the cow.
Well, maybe.
But if you remember what it was like 3 years ago, when everybody went to the store at once
and got all the toilet paper.
Certain things disappeared for months on end.
Yep.
And so I recommend people have a deep pantry. You know, buy things that you eat anyway.
Yeah.
That have a 6-month shelf life or more. And just make sure you have a deep pantry and rotate it out. Eat the latest date first. And worst case scenario, I don't know what I'm talking about, and you just bought some food cheaper, because whatever you pay for it today, I can assure you 6 months, a year from now, it will not be cheaper. It might be the same price if we're lucky, but it's probably going to cost more. Man. So it's actually a pretty good investment to buy some food right now and put that away. Making sure you can protect yourself, you and your family. I would say one of the most important things that doesn't cost anything is having a community, having good relationships with your neighbors, family, people around you, supporting them, having people that support you back. Again, history shows, whether we're talking hyperinflations in Weimar Germany and Zimbabwe or the Great Depression, the people that were best able to survive that had a network of people around them, a support group, friends and family, and other people that they could go through that crisis with. If you're all alone, that's much harder. And I know there's this mindset a lot of people have of, well, I'll stack up all this food and supplies and ammo and get in my bunker, but you have to sleep at some time. What if somebody shows up at your bunker while you're asleep? Right?
Or you can build a $275 million bunker in Hawaii.
Oh,
You could.
yeah.
If you do, let us know because we're moving in with you.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Well, Britt, we are at that time. But man, there's like a million questions. Every person I have on here, I'm like, dude, I've got like a million more questions.
I know. I just thought it'd be 4 hour podcast.
I know. We'll be here forever, and we promised we wouldn't keep you that long. But Britt, thank you so much. And again, guys, if you will, you've got to get on Britt's channel on YouTube. I think you post about every day as long as you can, pretty much. I mean, you put something out just about every day. And it's always
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, usually.
Is it Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Okay. I thought it was about every day, but it's just super practical, just awesome stuff. So
go get the books.
Yeah. And again, go to Amazon, look up Britt Gillette books. I believe Racing, what is that? Racing Armageddon, Signs of the Second Coming. Both of those are yours. You can get those on Amazon as well. I believe you can also go to your website as well and get those, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So End Times.
Inform yourself.
People. Yeah, exactly. Yourself. Yeah. Please stay informed. Give us your website address.
It's endtimesbibleprophecy.com with dashes between each word. Again, it might be easier just to Google or use a search engine on Britt Gillette and it'll pop up.
Oh, okay. I think actually that's how I found your website as well. So, but again, hey, Britt, thank you so much. I've got your cell number, so you will be hearing from me again.
That sounds great.
I'll be like, Britt, can you please come on? Britt, can you please come on? He's going to get so tired of us. Anyway. But hey, seriously. Man, no, seriously, thank you so much. This has just been fantastic.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, we do appreciate your time. Guys, listen, share this video. This is super practical stuff. This is something you really need to listen to. I know it's not working out, okay? But look, guys, listen to me. What he's talking about is going to affect your ability to buy food, okay? And if you're going to get big, you got to have lots of food. So this is going to bug every one of you. So you better listen and do something with the information you got today. But the most important thing is make sure you know Jesus. That is the most important thing. Money, all of this other stuff. Jesus said, seek you first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all this other stuff will be added to you. Okay? Britt, thank you again. God bless you. This has been Impact.
The Impact.